Confidence isn't about becoming someone else. It's about peeling back the layers of doubt to reveal the strength of your true self. When you embrace who you are, the world can't help but take notice. The art of being yourself. Unlock the confidence to live as your true self. Written by Zorlan Kraviv and published by Listen, Grow Sleep. Chapter 1. The True Mirror. Have you ever considered that the face you see in the mirror each day isn't actually the face that everyone else sees? It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? The reflection staring back at you is actually reversed. A distorted, back-to-front image of yourself that differs from how the world perceives you. Some years ago, I was on a flight to New York when I came across an article in the Financial Times about something called a true mirror. This remarkable invention, created by a brother and sister team named John and Catherine Walters, consists of two mirrors positioned at right angles to each other. When the seam between them is removed, the images bounce off each other, allowing you to see yourself exactly as others see you, not the reversed image we've grown accustomed to throughout our lives. Intrigued by this concept, I contacted John upon landing in New York and arranged to visit his gallery in Brooklyn. Walking into that space was like entering a circus sideshow. True mirrors of various sizes lined the walls, from full length to face-sized reflections. The moment I approached one of these mirrors and looked at my true reflection was one of the most disorienting experiences of my life. The first thing you notice when looking into a true mirror is that your head isn't on straight. Most of us naturally tilt our heads slightly one way or another, something we never realize because our regular mirrors reverse this tilt. When you try to correct it in a true mirror, you instinctively move in the wrong direction, adding to the disorientation. But beyond this initial adjustment, I experienced something profound, a flashback to my childhood in Glasgow. I remembered sitting with my chin in my hands, watching my mother apply her makeup. I would occasionally point out to her that one side of her top lip was higher than the other, just by a couple of millimeters, but noticeable to my young eyes. She would look in the mirror and deny it, telling me I was havering, talking nonsense. When I looked in the true mirror that day in Brooklyn, I finally saw the lip I had been wearing for 45 years, but had never truly seen. The difference between a regular mirror and a true mirror is profound. In a regular mirror, you look for reassurance, confirmation that you're beautiful, young, tidy, or that your appearance meets your expectations. But in a true mirror, you don't look at yourself. You look for yourself. You seek revelation, not reassurance. This distinction fascinated me because it relates directly to my life's work, helping people be themselves. Not in any narcissistic way, but because I believe that social reformation always begins with the individual. When we examine remarkable individuals, those who have successfully achieved what they set out to do, regardless of monetary success, we discover that what they have in common is that they have nothing in common. In my work with corporate leaders, politicians, geophysicists, musicians, dancers, and artists, I've identified the thread that links them. These are individuals who have managed to discover the unique gift the universe gave them when they incarnated, and then put that gift at the service of their goals. They've found their authentic selves and allowed that authenticity to guide their path. I believe we all come complete, born with one true note we were destined to sing. Our purpose isn't to find this note, it's already within us. Our challenge is to recognize it, embrace it, and express it in everything we do. Your unique note doesn't dictate your choice of job. What it dictates is how you do it. When we encounter people living in this authentic state, we often describe them as larger than life. They seem to occupy more space than the average person. They're at least a foot bigger in every direction, and they shine with an inner light as if they've swallowed the moon. But this description always makes me smile, because how could anyone be larger than life? Life itself is immense, boundless in its possibilities. The truth is that most of us don't take up nearly the space the universe intended for us. We confine ourselves to a small area around our toes, limiting our potential and our impact. That's why when you see someone in the full flow of their humanity, it's truly remarkable. They've expanded into the fullness of who they were meant to be. As we begin this journey together through the art of being yourself, I invite you to consider a simple yet profound truth. Your only job while you're here on this planet is to be as good at being you as others are at being themselves. Not to imitate, not to conform, but to discover and express your unique, authentic self. That's the deal. That's the art. Chapter 2, the question of a lifetime. Have you ever received that well-meaning piece of advice to just be yourself? Perhaps you've offered these words to someone else, a nervous child before a performance, a team member preparing for a presentation, or a friend facing a challenging situation. Just be yourself, we say, because when you're yourself, you're fabulous. This advice resonates deeply because it aligns with our innermost desire. If you tell John to be himself, he doesn't want to be Mary. He's quite content being John. But there's something curious about the use of the word just in this common phrase. It implies two things. First, that being yourself is an easy thing to do, and second, that it's an original piece of advice the recipient has never considered before. The reality is that being yourself might be the simplest concept in theory, yet one of the most challenging practices in execution. When it comes to being in the world, from the moment you arrived, you are given what I call a life sentence. None of us knows exactly how long we have. Perhaps 70 years, perhaps more, perhaps less. Where you're born, when you're born, and to whom you're born all influence how you become who you become. If you're born in Switzerland, chances are you have a long time to figure out this journey of selfhood. If you're born in Zimbabwe or certain parts of Glasgow, you might have significantly less time. But the more important questions aren't about life expectancy, they're about what you expect from life and what life expects from you. There are two periods in life when you're naturally exceptional at being yourself. The first is childhood. Young children are masters of authenticity because they haven't yet learned to disguise their uniqueness. They haven't developed the self-consciousness that leads to conformity. That's why you'll see children running naked on the beach until about age 5, after which they suddenly want bathing suits, the beginning of social awareness. If you were to walk into a classroom of 3-year-old boys and ask, "Who's the strongest boy in the class?" every hand would shoot up with competitive enthusiasm. But ask the same question to 7-year-olds and they'll point to specific classmates. Him. By age 7, they've learned the social hierarchy. Who's strongest, who's fastest, who's funniest, who's the bully. Social archetypes emerge around ages 5 to 8, marking the birth of self-consciousness. From that point forward, you become increasingly self-conscious and by default, less adept at being yourself. The second period of natural authenticity comes in old age. Elderly people excel at being themselves because, quite frankly, they no longer feel the need to conform. They reach a stage where they recognize there are more summers behind them than ahead, and this awareness intensifies everything. They become more honest, less compromising. They'll tell you directly, "I don't want the spinach, I'm not going to eat it. I don't like jazz, so turn that noise off. And while I'm at it, I don't like you." We often label these seniors as eccentric, but what they're actually doing is being authentic. They've returned to a state of genuine self-expression after decades of social accommodation. It creates an hourglass effect. You're great at being yourself when young, great at being yourself when old, but the middle period, that's where the challenges lie. That's when social pressures, professional expectations, and relationship dynamics require you to socialize, accommodate, and adapt, sometimes at the expense of your authentic self. To navigate this middle ground more effectively, I've developed what I call the I complex, a model to help you understand which I you mean when you say I. Most people are familiar with the concepts of superiority and inferiority complexes. Someone with a superiority complex considers themselves the most important person in any room, while someone with an inferiority complex suffers from an overly modest self-regard. Both are manifestations of a fragile ego, one expressing delusions of grandeur, the other delusions of insignificance. But there's a third way of being in the world that I call interiority. This is a disposition that differs fundamentally from both superiority and inferiority because it's completely uncomparative. Both superiority and inferiority require others as reference points. You need people to feel smaller than or larger than. Interiority, by contrast, is entirely unrelative. It's a perceptual vantage point, a sensibility, an orientation toward life that doesn't depend on external validation or comparison. Interiority is the only place in your life where you have no competition. Try to find a comparison to yourself, and you'll draw a blank. There is no one else exactly like you, with your specific combination of experiences, perspectives, talents, and challenges. When you operate from this position of interiority, you access a unique power, the power of authentic selfhood. As we continue our exploration of the art of being yourself, remember that the question, "Who am I?" has been looking for you your whole life. It may be the simplest yet most profound inquiry you'll ever engage with. In the chapters ahead, we'll delve deeper into the layers of identity that both obscure and reveal your true self, and discover practical approaches to living more authentically in a world that often encourages conformity. Chapter 3: The 4 Dimensions of Self. Have you ever considered that there might be multiple versions of you operating simultaneously in your life? The truth is, there are at least 4 dimensions of self that influence how you move through the world and how you understand your own identity. Let's explore these dimensions and how they interact to either enhance or inhibit your authentic self-expression. The most visible dimension is what everyone else thinks of you. This is your public persona, the you that exists in the perceptions of others. Imagine yourself as a USB stick that you plug into the world. You show up on the desktop of other people's consciousness in different ways depending on the context. There are as many opinions of you as there are people who know you, each shaped by their own perspectives, biases, and the specific ways you interact with them. Understanding this dimension is crucial because being yourself without awareness of how context shapes perception can be an ill-advised strategy. However, there's a particular challenge here that I've observed more frequently in women than men, what I call approval addiction. This is the compulsive need for validation, the hunger for approbation or recognition, the dependency on others telling you that you're okay. Approval addiction is one of the most debilitating obstacles on the path to authentic self-expression. When you need other people's approval, when you love someone else's opinion of you and mistake it for your own, you surrender your power to external forces. While you'll never be completely free from others' perceptions, it's essential to develop the capacity to be perception-free, to act from your own center rather than in response to others' expectations. The second dimension of self is your wish image, what you would like others to think of you. This isn't about being fake or pretending, it's about movement, possibility, potential. If the first dimension is like your backbone, the structural support of your social identity, this dimension is like your wishbone, representing aspiration and growth. This is your adaptive personality, your construct self. Even this dimension is unique because no one else has had exactly the same experiences or influences that you have. This is the part of you that keeps evolving, that responds to new information and circumstances. It helps you avoid becoming one of those people who claim to have 15 years of experience when what they really have is 1 year repeated 15 times. With each passing year, your job isn't to become someone different, but to become better at being who you already are. You're already unique. Your task is to discover how and then to amplify those distinctive qualities. This isn't a cosmetic exercise, but a process of uncovering and expressing your inherent uniqueness. Certain periods in life are particularly conducive to this kind of self-discovery and change. I call these intervals of possibility, moments when the potential for transformation is heightened. Sometimes these intervals are clearly marked, like graduation or retirement. Other times they're more subtle. A chance encounter, a job offer, a moment of insight that presents you with a choice. You sense that if you make a particular decision, the speed and direction of your life will change. Unfortunately, many intervals of possibility arise from crisis rather than opportunity. Most people sleepwalk through life until something catastrophic wakes them up. Illness, job loss, the death of a loved one, or even larger societal disruptions like natural disasters or terrorist attacks. These events can shake you out of complacency and force you to confront fundamental questions about who you are and what matters to you. But why wait for catastrophe? Why not engage with these essential questions from a position of strength and stability? When you're healthy, employed, and surrounded by love, that's when these inquiries can be most productive. The question becomes not, who am I in crisis, but who would I be if I fully expressed my potential? If you could be the person of your dreams, who would you be? The third dimension of self is what you think of you, your self-perception. This dimension fluctuates dramatically from day to day, even hour to hour. Some mornings you wake up feeling like the bee's knees, filled with inexplicable confidence and joy. On these days, you feel a kind of free-floating exuberance just looking for a target. Your hair looks fabulous, your words flow effortlessly, and everything just works. Other days, nothing works. You can barely summon the energy to get out of bed. The word thief steals your vocabulary, your legs feel heavy, and your usual confidence evaporates. These are two extremes of your ego, one characterized by self-congratulation, the other by self-castigation. Your entire life, from birth until now, has been about building a stable relationship with this ego. You need an ego to function in a Western capitalist world. Without one, you'd be overwhelmed by the competitive, individualistic nature of our society. But your challenge is to take the ego from its dominant position and pull it back so that it serves your authentic self rather than controlling it. The key is finding the still point between those extremes, what we might call equanimity or equilibrium. This is a state of mind that remains unperturbed by external events, neither inflated by success nor deflated by failure. It's a confidence that resembles the sky, constant and vast regardless of the weather passing through it. The sky doesn't take credit for a beautiful rainbow or apologize for a gloomy day. It simply is, recognizing the impermanence of both sunshine and storms. Similarly, you need to develop an inner stability that's as impervious to both praise and criticism as the sky is to weather patterns. In Western terms, we might call this quality humility, but humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. It's shifting your focus from self-absorption to contribution, from being the center of attention to making others the center of your attention. I learned this lesson as a child growing up in working-class Glasgow. In our community, social life centered around gatherings in people's homes, where everyone, adults and children alike, was expected to perform. My sisters and I would be positioned like the Von Trapp family to sing for these gatherings, despite our limited musical talents. One night, overcome with self-consciousness, I told my mother I didn't want to sing because I was shy. Everyone would be looking at me. Her response was both jarring and liberating. "Caroline, don't flatter yourself, darling. You think anybody downstairs is interested in you? They're not. Your job's to go and make them happy, so go and sing." That advice has stayed with me throughout my life, instilling in me a spectacular disregard for both my limitations and for being the center of attention. Since that day, I have never been the center of attention. You, the audience, the people I serve, are the center of mine. That shift in focus is transformative. The fourth and final dimension of self is the ever-present, unchanging you, the essential self that has remained constant since childhood and will continue until the end of your life. In India, where I spend considerable time, people are raised with the understanding that they are spiritual beings having a physical experience. In the West, we tend to identify primarily with our physical bodies, only turning to spiritual considerations later in life, if at all. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked by a journalist, "What's your message to the world?" he replied simply, "My life. My life is my message. Your life is your message too. It might not be as influential as Gandhi's, but it's no less significant in its uniqueness. Why are you here if not to express the message that only you can deliver? When you contemplate your identity, what it means to be alive, why you deserve to exist, consider that you are not your thoughts because you think them. You cannot be your feelings because then, who is the you that feels them? You're not what you have or what you do. You're not even who you love or who loves you. There must be something more fundamental beneath all these temporary aspects of experience. People who have transcended the judgments and categories we impose, like race, gender, age, political affiliation, or sexual orientation, have done so because they knew why they were here. They understood their essential nature and purpose. Even those born without advantages, even those facing significant challenges or limitations, can tap into this inner voice, this authentic self, and achieve remarkable things as a result. When you connect with this deepest dimension of self, not only does the pace of your life quicken and its substance enrich, but you will never feel superfluous again. You will recognize your unique place in the tapestry of existence and the contribution that only you can make. Chapter 4. The Power of Interiority. Have you ever met someone who radiates an unshakable sense of self? Someone who seems completely at ease in their own skin, regardless of external circumstances? This quality, this centered presence, is what I call interiority, and it's the foundation of authentic self-expression. To truly understand interiority, let me introduce you to a remarkable woman named Jill Scott. A talented singer and poet, Jill was preparing to perform after another renowned artist, Erykah Badu. A French filmmaker who was documenting the event asked Jill if she was nervous about following such a celebrated performer. Her response perfectly embodies the essence of interiority. That chick right there has definitely led the way for me and a lot of other sisters, Jill acknowledged, showing genuine appreciation for Erykah's influence. When pressed about whether she was nervous to perform after her, Jill replied with magnificent self-possession, "Have you ever seen me perform? I am the lady Jill Scott. I am a poet and a singer and a lot of other things. We all have our own thing, that's the magic, and everybody comes with their own sense of strength and their own queendom. Mine could never compare to hers, and hers could never compare to mine." This is what interiority looks like in action. Jill wasn't dismissing Erykah's talent or importance. She was simply clear about her own unique value. She wasn't competing because she understood that authentic self-expression exists beyond comparison. Her confidence wasn't arrogance, it was clarity about her distinct contribution. When you figure out how to be yourself in this way, life becomes incredibly liberating. You don't develop an identity predicated on being a patchwork personality, a composite of all your experiences and influences. You're not just somebody's boss or somebody's mother or anybody's anything. You're yourself in all your complexity and uniqueness. Interiority allows you to move through the world with a kind of psychological sovereignty. You're influenced by others, but not defined by them. You're responsive to context, but not controlled by it. You maintain your center even as you adapt to changing circumstances. This quality is particularly valuable in professional settings. People who operate from interiority tend to be more effective leaders, more innovative thinkers, and more resilient in the face of challenges. They don't waste energy trying to be what others expect. Instead, they channel that energy into authentic contribution. Consider how differently you approach tasks when you're trying to impress others versus when you're expressing your genuine capabilities. In the former state, you're constantly looking outward for validation, second-guessing your decisions, and feeling anxious about potential judgment. In the latter, you're focused on the work itself, drawing on your natural strengths and finding flow in the process. Interiority also transforms your relationships. When you're not seeking validation or comparing yourself to others, you can be fully present with people. You listen more attentively because you're not mentally preparing your impressive response. You offer genuine support rather than competitive advice. You celebrate others' successes without feeling diminished by them. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to feedback or immune to criticism. Rather, you develop the discernment to distinguish between useful input that helps you grow and external opinions that simply pull you away from your center. You learn to value perspective without becoming dependent on approval. How do you cultivate this quality of interiority? It begins with self-knowledge, not the superficial kind that comes from personality tests or social media quizzes, but the deep understanding that emerges from honest self-reflection. Ask yourself, what activities engage me so completely that I lose track of time? When do I feel most alive and authentic? What contributions come naturally to me that others find valuable? Pay attention to the moments when you feel most at home in yourself. These aren't necessarily the times when you're most comfortable. They might involve challenge or even struggle, but they're the experiences that feel aligned with your essential nature. They're the activities that don't require you to contort yourself into someone you're not. Another practice that develops interiority is what I call opinion fasting, deliberately abstaining from sharing your views on matters that don't directly concern you. In our social media saturated culture, we're constantly invited to weigh in on everything from politics to celebrity relationships to the latest viral controversy. This creates a habit of externalized attention and reactive thinking. By consciously stepping back from the compulsion to have and express opinions about everything, you create space for deeper reflection. You begin to distinguish between thoughts that arise from your authentic perspective and those you've absorbed from your environment. You reclaim your mental sovereignty. Physical practices can also strengthen interiority. Activities like meditation, yoga, or even focused exercise help you develop awareness of your internal state. They train you to notice when you're being pulled away from your center by external stimuli or internal reactivity. Over time, this awareness becomes a kind of early warning system that helps you maintain your psychological balance. Perhaps most importantly, cultivating interiority requires courage, the willingness to stand in your truth even when it differs from prevailing opinions or expectations. This isn't about being contrarian or difficult. It's about honoring your authentic perspective, even when it would be easier to conform. Remember Jill Scott's quiet confidence? That's the demeanor of someone who has done the inner work to know herself and honor her unique contribution. She doesn't need to diminish others to feel significant. She doesn't need external validation to recognize her value. She simply stands in her truth, her queendom, as she calls it, and offers her gifts without apology or exaggeration. That's the power of interiority, and it's available to each of us when we commit to the practice of authentic self-knowledge and expression. Chapter 5. Intervals of Possibility. Life doesn't unfold at a steady pace. It moves in rhythms, periods of stability punctuated by moments of potential transformation. I call these moments intervals of possibility, times when the opportunity for meaningful change is heightened, when the trajectory of your life can shift in significant ways. Some intervals of possibility announce themselves clearly. They arrive with ceremonial fanfare: graduations, weddings, births, new jobs, relocations. These transitions are socially recognized as important life passages, and they come with established rituals to mark their significance. Other intervals are more subtle. They might appear as a chance encounter with a stranger whose perspective shifts your thinking. Perhaps it's a book that finds you at precisely the right moment, offering insight that illuminates your path. Maybe it's a quiet realization that emerges during an ordinary day, a moment of clarity about what truly matters to you. Whether dramatic or subtle, these intervals share a common quality. They present you with a choice that could alter the speed and direction of your life. You stand at a bifurcation on the path, sensing that the decision you make now will have cascading effects on your future. Unfortunately, many of the most powerful intervals of possibility arise from crisis rather than opportunity. Most people sleepwalk through life until something catastrophic wakes them up. Perhaps you or someone you love receives a serious diagnosis. Maybe you lose a job that defined your identity. Perhaps a relationship that anchored your life suddenly ends. Even impersonal events can create these intervals. A terrorist attack, a natural disaster, a global pandemic. These collective traumas can shake us out of complacency and force us to confront fundamental questions about what matters and how we want to live. The problem with catastrophic intervals is that they catch you at your most vulnerable. You're making potentially life-altering decisions from a position of weakness, fear, or grief rather than strength and clarity. Your thinking is clouded by emotion, and your resources, both internal and external, may be depleted. This raises an important question. Why wait for crisis? Why not intentionally engage with the deep questions of purpose and authenticity when you're strong, healthy, and stable. When you have a job, when you're in a secure relationship, when life is relatively balanced, that's when you have the psychological bandwidth to explore these questions thoughtfully. Creating intentional intervals of possibility might involve setting aside time for regular life reviews, perhaps quarterly or annually, where you step back from daily demands to assess your direction. Are you moving toward greater authenticity or away from it? Are your choices expanding your capacity for self-expression or constraining it? What adjustments would bring you into closer alignment with your essential self? These reviews aren't about setting conventional goals or measuring external achievements. They're about calibrating your life to your authentic nature, ensuring that how you spend your time, energy, and attention reflects what truly matters to you. Another way to create intervals of possibility is through deliberate exposure to new perspectives and experiences. Travel to unfamiliar places, engage with people whose backgrounds differ from yours. Explore fields of knowledge outside your expertise. These encounters can disrupt habitual thinking patterns and open new avenues for self-understanding and expression. Artistic and creative pursuits also generate powerful intervals of possibility. Whether you're creating art yourself or deeply engaging with others' creative works, these experiences can bypass your analytical mind and access deeper levels of awareness. They often reveal aspects of yourself that logical thinking cannot reach. Relationships, too, can serve as catalysts for authentic self-discovery. Certain people have a remarkable capacity to see us more clearly than we see ourselves, to recognize potential we've overlooked, or patterns we've missed. These might be friends, mentors, coaches, or even brief encounters with perceptive strangers. When someone reflects back to you a more expansive vision of who you are, it creates an interval of possibility, an opportunity to step into a larger version of yourself. Whatever form these intervals take, they share a common invitation to move beyond the familiar constraints of your established identity and explore more authentic ways of being. They ask you to distinguish between the self you've constructed to meet external expectations and the self that emerges from your essential nature. This distinction becomes particularly important during major life transitions. When you retire from a long career, for instance, you face the question of who you are beyond your professional identity. When children leave home, parents confront similar questions about their purpose and value. These passages can be disorienting, but they also offer extraordinary opportunities for authentic reinvention. The key to navigating intervals of possibility effectively is maintaining connection to your core values while remaining open to new expressions of those values. It's about recognizing the difference between your essential self, which remains relatively constant, and the various forms through which that self might be expressed, which can evolve significantly over time. Consider someone whose core value is fostering connection between people. Early in life, this might express itself through organizing social events among friends. In midlife, it might manifest as creating collaborative environments in a workplace. Later, it might take the form of bringing together diverse community groups around shared concerns. The underlying value remains consistent, while its expression evolves with changing circumstances and capabilities. As you move through life's intervals of possibility, maintain this balance between rootedness and openness, between knowing who you are at your core and remaining receptive to new ways of expressing that essence. This balance allows you to grow and change without losing your center, to evolve without becoming unmoored from your authentic self. Remember that these intervals aren't just about personal fulfillment, though that's certainly important. They're also about contribution, about bringing your unique gifts more fully into the world. Each time you align more closely with your authentic nature, you increase your capacity to make the distinctive contribution that only you can make. Chapter 6. The Courage of Authenticity. Being yourself sounds simple until you actually try to do it. Then, you discover that authentic self-expression requires a particular kind of courage. Not the dramatic bravery celebrated in adventure stories, but the quiet valor of showing up as you truly are in a world that often rewards conformity. This courage manifests in various ways throughout your life. Sometimes it's the courage to stand alone, to maintain your perspective when it differs from the prevailing view. Other times, it's the courage to be vulnerable, to acknowledge limitations or uncertainties rather than projecting false confidence. Often it's the courage to change, to let go of familiar but limiting patterns and explore new ways of being. Whatever form it takes, the courage of authenticity always involves a willingness to risk disapproval for the sake of integrity. It means valuing your truth more than others' comfort with that truth. It means recognizing that while you can't control how people respond to your authentic self, you can control whether you present that self honestly. Consider how this courage might manifest in everyday situations. Perhaps you're in a meeting where everyone seems to support an initiative that you believe is misguided. The easy path is silence or token agreement. The authentic path requires you to voice your concerns thoughtfully, even if it creates tension or marks you as the dissenter. Or imagine you're in a social setting where the conversation turns to a topic about which you have strong feelings that differ from the apparent consensus. Do you mute your perspective to maintain harmony? Do you express a watered-down version of your views? Or do you share your authentic thoughts while remaining open to others' perspectives? These seemingly small moments accumulate over time, either reinforcing your commitment to authenticity or eroding it. Each time you choose the convenient, inauthentic response, you make it slightly harder to choose differently next time. Each time you find the courage to be genuine, you strengthen that capacity for future challenges. The courage of authenticity becomes particularly important in 3 domains: work, relationships, and self-development. In each area, specific fears can undermine authentic expression, and specific practices can cultivate greater courage. In professional settings, many people fear that authentic self-expression might limit their advancement or acceptance. They adopt what they perceive as successful personas, perhaps more aggressive, more accommodating, more technical, or more charismatic than their natural disposition. While strategic adaptation to context is sometimes appropriate, persistent misalignment between your work persona and authentic self creates psychological strain and diminishes your effectiveness. The alternative isn't to ignore professional norms or indulge every impulse regardless of context. Rather, it's to find ways to bring your distinctive strengths and perspectives to your work while respecting the legitimate requirements of your role. It's about adding your unique value rather than simply fitting in. I've worked with countless professionals who discovered that what they thought were liabilities in the workplace, sensitivity, introversion, unconventional thinking, emotional expressiveness, actually became assets when embraced authentically rather than suppressed. Their courage to work from their genuine strengths rather than simulated ones ultimately enhanced both their performance and their satisfaction. In relationships, the fear of rejection often undermines authenticity. Many people present edited versions of themselves, highlighting traits they believe will attract others while concealing aspects they fear might repel. This strategy might secure initial acceptance, but it creates relationships built on partial or false foundations, which inevitably become unstable over time. The courage of authenticity in relationships involves revealing yourself gradually but honestly, allowing connections to form based on genuine compatibility rather than performance. It means expressing your actual thoughts, feelings, needs, and boundaries, even when doing so might create conflict or disappointment. This doesn't mean unfiltered expression of every passing emotion or thought. Authentic communication still requires discernment, timing, and care for others' feelings. But it does mean ensuring that what you express, however carefully, is true to your actual experience rather than calculated for effect. The domain of self-development presents perhaps the subtlest challenges to authenticity. Here, the courage required is the courage to see yourself clearly, to acknowledge both your gifts and your limitations without the distortions of either grandiosity or self-deprecation. Many personal growth approaches inadvertently encourage inauthenticity by promoting idealized versions of human development. They present models of how you should think, feel, or behave that may not align with your authentic nature. The result can be a kind of spiritual or psychological perfectionism that actually distances you from your true self. Authentic self-development, by contrast, starts with honest self-acceptance, not as a final state, but as the foundation for genuine growth. It recognizes that your path to becoming more fully yourself won't look exactly like anyone else's. It honors your specific temperament, history, values, and circumstances, rather than imposing external templates. Across all these domains, the courage of authenticity requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to fear. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. That's neither possible nor desirable. Fear is a natural response to uncertainty and risk, both of which are inherent in authentic living. The goal is to develop a different relationship with fear, to feel it without being controlled by it. This shift happens gradually, through repeated experiences of surviving the very things you feared. You express an unpopular opinion and discover that while some people disagree, others appreciate your perspective. You reveal a vulnerability and find that it strengthens rather than weakens your relationships. You acknowledge a limitation and realize it creates space for growth rather than confirming inadequacy. Each of these experiences builds your capacity for authentic self-expression in the face of fear. They don't make the fear disappear, but they put it in perspective. They help you recognize that the costs of inauthenticity, the diminished vitality, the constrained contribution, the shallow connections, are ultimately greater than the risks of being yourself. The courage of authenticity also draws strength from clarity about your values. When you're clear about what matters most to you, what principles you want your life to embody, decisions about authentic expression become more straightforward. You can ask yourself, will this choice align me more closely with my core values, or will it distance me from them? The answer often illuminates the authentic path, even when that path involves challenge or discomfort. Finally, the courage to be yourself flourishes in supportive community. Seek out people who value authenticity, both in themselves and in others. These are people who can disagree with you without rejecting you, who can challenge your thinking without diminishing your worth, who can appreciate your unique perspective even when it differs from theirs. In such communities, courage becomes contagious. When you witness others expressing themselves authentically, it awakens your own capacity for genuine self-expression. When you experience acceptance for your authentic self, it strengthens your resolve to live from that self more consistently. Remember that the courage of authenticity isn't about achieving some perfect state of self-actualization. It's about an ongoing commitment to aligning your outer expression with your inner truth, a commitment you renew each day through countless small choices. Some days, you'll embody this courage more fully than others. The goal isn't perfection, but direction, a gradual movement toward greater congruence between who you are and how you live. Chapter 7. Authenticity in a hyper-connected world. In today's hyper-connected world, being yourself presents unique challenges and opportunities. Social media platforms invite us to curate our identities, presenting carefully edited versions of ourselves for public consumption. Digital communication removes many of the contextual cues that facilitate authentic connection. The constant exposure to others' highlight reels can trigger comparison and self-doubt. How do you maintain authenticity in this environment? The first step is recognizing the difference between connection and performance. Much of our online interaction has become performative. We post for likes, comments, and shares rather than genuine expression or connection. We craft personas that we believe will be well received, rather than sharing our authentic experiences and perspectives. This performance mindset extends beyond social media into our digital communications. We carefully edit emails to strike just the right tone. We deliberate over text messages, analyzing how they might be interpreted. We filter our thoughts through layers of calculation before expressing them. While thoughtfulness in communication is valuable, this hypervigilance often stems from fear rather than consideration. The alternative isn't reckless self-disclosure or unfiltered expression. Rather, it's bringing intentional authenticity to your digital presence. This begins with clarity about your purpose for engaging with various platforms and technologies. Are you seeking genuine connection, professional visibility, creative expression, entertainment? When you're clear about your purpose, you can make more conscious choices about what and how you share. Consider conducting a digital authenticity audit. Review your social media profiles, your email communication patterns, your text messaging habits. Where do you notice discrepancies between how you present yourself online and who you know yourself to be? Where do you feel most and least authentic in your digital interactions? This awareness is the foundation for more aligned choices. Pay particular attention to the subtle ways that approval seeking shapes your online behavior. Do you find yourself checking repeatedly for responses to your posts? Do you feel deflated when something you share doesn't receive the engagement you hoped for? Do you hesitate to express certain views or share certain experiences because they might not be well received? These patterns signal that external validation may be driving your digital expression rather than authentic self-representation. One practice that can help recalibrate your relationship with digital platforms is what I call intentional invisibility, deliberately stepping back from public sharing for a period to reconnect with your intrinsic motivations. During this time, you might continue to create, reflect, or engage with others' content, but without broadcasting your own activities or seeking validation. This temporary withdrawal can help you distinguish between what you genuinely want to express and what you've been conditioned to share for approval. Another valuable practice is authentic curation, being selective about what you share, not based on what will impress others, but on what genuinely represents your values, interests, and experiences. This isn't about presenting a perfect image. It's about ensuring that what you do choose to share reflects something true about who you are, even if it's just one facet of your multidimensional self. The hyper-connected world also presents unprecedented opportunities for authentic connection and expression. Never before have we had such access to diverse perspectives, communities of shared interest, and platforms for creative expression. The key is approaching these opportunities with intentionality rather than reactivity. Seek out digital spaces that encourage authentic exchange rather than performance or posturing. These might be smaller, more intimate forums rather than mass platforms. They might be communities organized around shared interests or values rather than personal broadcasting. They might be spaces with norms that explicitly value honesty, vulnerability, and genuine dialogue. When you do engage in larger social platforms, consider how you might bring greater authenticity to your participation. This could mean sharing more of your actual lived experience rather than only the highlights. It might involve expressing thoughtful perspectives on matters you care about, even when they don't align with prevailing views. It could include acknowledging uncertainty or limitations rather than projecting false expertise. Remember that authentic self-expression online doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. Just as in physical spaces, appropriate disclosure varies by context and relationship. The goal isn't radical transparency, but aligned representation, ensuring that what you do share, with whomever you share it, genuinely reflects who you are. The hyper-connected world also challenges authenticity through constant exposure to others' lives and achievements. The natural human tendency towards social comparison has been amplified by platforms that showcase others' successes, possessions, appearances, and experiences. This can trigger feelings of inadequacy or pressure to emulate others rather than developing your authentic path. To counter this influence, practice conscious consumption of digital content. Notice when browsing social media or other platforms triggers comparison or diminishes your sense of self. Be selective about whom you follow and what content you consume. Seek out voices and perspectives that inspire authentic living rather than conformity or competition. Consider also how technology affects your relationship with your internal experience. Many of us have developed the habit of immediately reaching for our phones whenever we feel bored, uncomfortable, or uncertain. This constant distraction can disconnect us from our authentic feelings and thoughts, preventing the self-reflection that nurtures authenticity. Try creating technology-free spaces in your life, times and places where you deliberately disconnect from devices to reconnect with yourself. This might be the first hour after waking or the last hour before sleep. It might be meals or walks or conversations with loved ones. These technology-free intervals create room for the internal awareness that grounds authentic living. The hyper-connected world also presents unique challenges for maintaining boundaries, another essential aspect of authenticity. Digital technologies blur the lines between work and personal life. public and private, accessible and inaccessible. Without clear boundaries, you may find yourself constantly responding to others' needs and expectations rather than honoring your own rhythms and priorities. Authentic boundary setting in a digital context might include establishing clear times when you're not available online, communicating these boundaries to others, and honoring them yourself. It might involve creating separate digital spaces for different aspects of your life, professional, personal, creative, so that you can engage authentically in each context without inappropriate blending. Finally, remember that authentic living in a hyper-connected world requires regular recalibration. Technologies and platforms evolve rapidly, as do social norms around their use. What feels authentic today may feel performative or depleting tomorrow. Maintain an experimental mindset, regularly assessing how your digital engagement affects your sense of authenticity and adjusting accordingly. The goal isn't to reject digital connection. These technologies offer valuable ways to learn, create, and connect. Rather, the aim is to engage with them intentionally, ensuring that they enhance rather than diminish your capacity for authentic self-expression and genuine connection. Chapter 8. The lifelong practice of being yourself. Being yourself isn't a destination you reach once and for all. It's a lifelong practice, a way of moving through the world that requires continuous attention, adjustment, and recommitment. Like any meaningful practice, it deepens over time, revealing new dimensions and challenges as you evolve. This ongoing nature of authentic living is both its challenge and its gift. The challenge lies in the persistence required, the daily choice to align with your truth rather than convenience or convention. The gift lies in the endless discovery, the continual revelation of new aspects of yourself and new ways to express them. As you continue your journey of authentic living, certain principles can guide your practice. First among these is self-compassion. The path of authenticity inevitably includes missteps. Times when you lose connection with your center, when you react from fear rather than truth, when you compromise your values for approval or safety. These moments aren't failures, but opportunities for deeper learning about yourself and the forces that pull you away from authenticity. When you notice yourself acting inauthentically, resist the temptation to harsh self-judgment. Instead, bring curious attention to what happened. What fears or needs were driving your behavior? What external pressures influenced your choices? What values or aspects of yourself were you attempting to protect? This compassionate inquiry yields far more useful insights than self-criticism. Another guiding principle is incremental expansion. Authentic living isn't about dramatic declarations or radical reinvention. It's about gradually expanding the contexts in which you express yourself genuinely. Perhaps you begin by being more authentic with close friends, then extend that authenticity to family relationships, then to professional interactions, then to broader social contexts. This gradual approach honors the legitimate need for safety and belonging while still moving toward greater authenticity. It recognizes that different environments present different risks and rewards for authentic expression. By expanding incrementally, you can assess the actual, rather than imagined consequences of greater authenticity in each context. A third principle is balanced awareness, maintaining connection with both your internal truth and external reality. Authentic living doesn't mean ignoring context or disregarding others' needs and perspectives. It means bringing your genuine self to each situation while remaining responsive to its particular requirements and opportunities. This balance requires ongoing discernment. In each situation, ask yourself, what does authenticity look like here? How can I honor my truth while also respecting this context? What's the most genuine way for me to engage with what's happening now? These questions help you navigate the dynamic relationship between internal authenticity and external engagement. The practice of being yourself also involves continuous discovery. Your authentic self isn't a fixed entity, but an evolving reality. As you grow and change, as you encounter new experiences and relationships, as you develop new capacities and interests, your understanding of who you are naturally expands. Authentic living means remaining curious about these developments rather than clinging to a static self-concept. This ongoing discovery happens through both reflection and action. Reflection, through practices like journaling, meditation, or thoughtful conversation, helps you notice emerging aspects of yourself and integrate them into your self-understanding. Action, trying new things, taking risks, engaging with unfamiliar situations, reveals capacities and preferences you might not discover through reflection alone. The interplay between reflection and action creates a virtuous cycle of authentic development. Reflection generates insights that inform more authentic action. Action generates experiences that enrich further reflection. Together, they foster an evolving authenticity that remains true to your essential nature while embracing growth and change. Another dimension of the lifelong practice is authentic relationship. None of us develops authenticity in isolation. We need mirrors, people who reflect back to us both our genuine qualities and our blind spots. We need witnesses, people who see and validate our authentic expression. We need challengers, people who question our assumptions and stretch our perspectives. Cultivating relationships that support authenticity involves both selection and cultivation. Be intentional about whom you spend time with, seeking people who value authenticity in themselves and others. Within those relationships, practice vulnerable truth-telling, receptive listening, and genuine appreciation. These qualities create an interpersonal field that nurtures authentic expression. The practice of being yourself also includes navigating the inevitable tensions of authentic living. These include the tension between honesty and kindness, between self-expression and receptivity to others, between commitment to your values and openness to growth. Authentic living doesn't resolve these tensions once and for all, but engages with them continuously, finding dynamic balance rather than rigid resolution. This engagement with tension requires psychological flexibility, the capacity to hold seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously. You can be both committed to your perspective and open to others' views. You can both honor your needs and care for others' well-being. You can both accept yourself as you are and aspire to grow. This both and orientation creates space for a more nuanced and integrated authenticity than rigid either or thinking allows. As your practice of authenticity deepens over time, you may notice subtle shifts in your experience. The effort required to be yourself gradually diminishes as authentic expression becomes more natural and habitual. The anxiety about others' responses decreases as you develop greater resilience to disapproval. The internal conflict between different aspects of yourself eases as you integrate them into a more coherent whole. You may also notice external shifts. Relationships that cannot accommodate your authentic self naturally fall away, while those that value your genuine expression deepen. Work that aligns with your authentic strengths and values becomes more available, while opportunities that would require significant compromise become less appealing. Your environment gradually reorganizes around your authentic self rather than your adaptive persona. These shifts don't happen overnight or without challenge. The path of authenticity includes setbacks, resistance, and periods of confusion or doubt. There will be times when the pressure to conform feels overwhelming, when the consequences of authentic expression seem too costly, when you lose touch with your own truth amid external noise. During these difficult passages, return to the fundamentals of authentic practice. Reconnect with your body, which often holds wisdom that your mind has temporarily forgotten. Engage with nature, art, or other sources of beauty that bypass your analytical mind and speak directly to your essential self. Seek support from those who know and value your authentic being. These resources can help you find your way back to yourself when you feel lost. But remember also that the practice of authenticity serves something larger than personal fulfillment. When you live from your authentic center, you contribute something unique and irreplaceable to the world. Your genuine perspective enriches collective understanding. Your authentic gifts address needs that might otherwise go unmet. Your true presence creates space for others to be more fully themselves. This is perhaps the deepest motivation for the lifelong practice of being yourself. Not just personal satisfaction, but meaningful contribution. By bringing your authentic self more fully into the world, you participate in the evolution of human consciousness and culture. You become part of the movement toward greater authenticity, creativity, and connection in our collective life. The art of being yourself ultimately transcends technique or strategy. It's about remembering what you've always known at some level, that beneath all the conditioning, adaptation, and performance lies your essential nature, waiting to be recognized and expressed. The practice is not about becoming someone new, but about returning to who you've always been, bringing that authentic self more fully into your lived experience. As you continue this practice throughout your life, may you discover ever deeper layers of your authentic being. May you find the courage to express that being even when it's challenging. May you create relationships and environments that nurture your authentic expression. And may your unique contribution, the gift that only you can give, find its way into a world that needs exactly what you have to offer.